We are all born naked, and the rest is drag. This quote from RuPaul, noted as the Queen of Drag, makes us consider how much of our lives are driven by our prescribed gender. We're born naked, human, and without an understanding of what society says a boy or girl can be or do. We go through our lives performing what society says we should be. We are performing daily drag, whether we realize it or not. This idea aligns closely with what Robin Hood stories set out to explore. Today we're here to talk about the man, the myth, the legend, Robin Hood. Robin Hood is a shockingly hilarious, and dare I say woke, tale from medieval times. Robin Hood explores themes of oppression, community, solidarity, and gender. These ballads took social norms in their time and completely turned them on their head. It was crude, offensive, and hilarious commentary that was deeply political. Robin Hood is a work that sets out to ask the question, how can we fight oppression? And the author gives us many answers to that question. But to truly understand the text, we have to consider why so many characters in the Robin Hood tales cross-dress. Subsequently, what is gender outside of prescribed performance anyways? Through absurd and hilarious circumstances, Robin Hood shows us that deconstructing the gender binary leads us to break down the societal standards that uphold unethical structures. So come, gentle they all, and listen a while. Hey, down, down, and a down. Throughout the Robin Hood stories, he identifies as an outlaw. Not because he's a criminal who steals, but because he redistributes wealth from corrupt systems to those who need it the most. The starving, the poor, the most vulnerable in our society. An outlaw is separated from a criminal because he is breaking the laws upholding corruption. He is breaking the laws directly harming and impacting his community, the most vulnerable. He corrects systematic wrongs through actions deemed illegal by the church state. Robin Hood, Marian, and their band of merry men defy social norms and break gender roles constantly to avoid being caught and enact their plans of rebellion. Robin showcases loyalty and bravery throughout the text. However, rebellion seems to be the strongest theme around him. Bravery is one piece of the heroic code, stemming from Anglo-Saxon culture and an important piece of broader medieval literature. What's more brave than rebellion against oppressive systems? Everything he does is an act of rebellion against corruption, leaving his noble class, living in a royal forest, redistributing wealth, speaking out against authority, and of course, dressing outside of his prescribed gender roles. Speaking out against authority was blasphemous, a sin, worthy of hanging, or worse, even sometimes being burned at the stake. There was no separation of church and state. To defy the king was to defy God himself. A very important aspect of Robin's character that is shown through many of these stories is his use of trickery to enact this rebellion. He uses drag and cross-dressing to create commentary and trickery in order to rebel. To understand the deeper meaning of the story as anything other than shock humor, we have to understand what drag is at its core. According to the Human Rights Foundation, drag is a performance art that uses costumes, makeup, and other tools to present exaggerated forms of gender expression, to critique gender inequalities, and imagine a transformational future where people are truly free in how they express themselves. If Robin Hood does nothing else, it uses cross-dressing, disguise, and costuming, if you will, to imagine a future where he and his community live free of this suffocatingly strict system. In this ballad, Robin Hood and the Bishop, we see one of my favorite scenes from medieval literature that I have yet to encounter. A classic what's in your pants joke. You heard me right, and it's done better than most modern iterations of the joke. This ballad sets up a scene of Robin seeking an escape from the bishop who is running after him. He runs into an old woman who he has helped recently. She remembers him and agrees to help him by swapping clothes with him and pretending to be him when the bishop comes around so that he may evade detection. A classic trope of cross-dressing in the Robin Hood universe at this point. It crosses over to drag when it becomes political. The bishop inevitably comes to visit the old woman's house. Recognizing the iconic mantle of green, the bishop inevitably comes to the old woman's house and recognizes her mantle of green as Robin Hood's. And the old woman he set on a milk-white steed. And who is yonder? The bishop then said, that's ranging within yonder wood. Mary, says the old woman, I think it to be a man called Robin Hood. Why, who art thou? The bishop he said, which I have here with me. Why, I am an old woman, thou cuckoldly bishop. Lift up my leg and see. As we can see, the author makes use of this joke in many ways. It brings to light the taboo of women making crude jokes to a bishop, nonetheless. Then she dares him to check under her dress, lifting her leg, an inflammatory and shocking action from an old woman. She broke every expectation of her character in that moment, helping an outlaw, cross-dressing, speaking out against authority, and making crude sexual jokes to a godly figure was very provocative at the time. It would even be provocative in today's time period. That would drive people, particularly conservatives, crazy. So the fact that this was used to call attention to how egregious the church's corrupt actions were at the time for an old woman to act in such a manner is hilarious and an act of commentary via drag. The use of drag in this instance highlights another common theme within Robin Hood: community. Robin's commitment to serving his community is the reason the old woman happily helped him in the first place. Community is one of the most important pieces in fighting oppressive governments. If the government won't help you, you have to survive on your loved ones, your neighbors, your community in order to survive. This quote is so much more than shock humor. It's a critique on gender roles and the church. Speaking of gender roles, I would be remiss if we didn't discuss a certain bad bitch herself, Maid Marian. Though we may live under a very different system today, our current system draws much inspiration from feudalism. With strict roles of class and social mobility, how we see gender and individuality is still so difficult to break out of today. Misogyny is as alive and well today as it was in medieval times. However, women did not have the same social mobility that we have today. Something relevant and explored through Marian's character. You were still expected to submit to men, and you didn't have much choice in decision making. Essentially, you were equated to property. There was no escape from the roles you were born into. Maid Marian, in some iterations, born into noble class, a fated lover of Robin and a fighter at her core. She's cunning, independent, and willing to go after what she wants, no matter the risk. She is one of the early feminist heroes in literature. This is highlighted through the ballad Robin Hood and Maid Marian. The story is set up describing how beautiful Marian is and the love she and Robin share. It explains her heartbreak when Robin is exiled and leaves to fight on behalf of his community. Evelyn Perry writes a beautiful article highlighting the feminine heroism in the Maid Marian ballad. Her article is filled with evidence supporting the idea of this essay. Perry acknowledges Garber's categories of cross-dressing and identity, of self-sufficiency and self-knowledge, to establish that female heroism is indeed a continued space of possibility in the early Robin Hood materials. They elaborate that Marian's cross-dressing is the invocation of an alternative third sexual identity, one that offers a challenge to easy notions of binarity, describing a space of possibility, rather than a sexual role or means to power. This is a powerful statement that brings to light the depth of Marian's character. Through cross-dressing, she is not only realizing how strict her roles of class and gender truly are, but she herself is able to understand the gender binary and break out of it. The act of cross-dressing inherently critiques the corruption and lack of autonomy she seeks to escape. Perplexed and vexed and troubled in mind, she dressed herself like a page and ranged the wood to find Robin Hood, the bravest of men in that age, with a quiver and bow, sword, buckler, and all. Thus armed was Maid Marian most bold. Perry continues, Disguise, cross-dressing, and revelation become the means of defining the female hero's identity. I couldn't have said this better myself. She highlights the importance of understanding she is in such a confused state that she is forced outside of herself, outside of cultural and social expectations. The cross-dressing is a manifestation of her internal struggle, highlighted in the line, perplexed and vexed, which directly leads to her ability to match the skilled Robin Hood in battle. Breaking down the gender binary leads to her self-determination, turning her into a hero. They drew out their swords and cutting they went, at least an hour or more. The blood ran apace from bold Robin's face, and Marian was wounded sore. "Oh, hold thy hand, said Robin Hood, and thou shalt be one of my string." It is because she stepped out of her prescribed gender and social roles through costume, others allowed her to fight at her best. She tests her skills and holds her own in the battle, coming to a tie. She earns the respect of her beloved and peers in battle, which likely would have never happened if she was operating under social rules at the time. Thus, I circle back to how this is drag, as it allows her to understand her individual identity and criticize the binary and prescribed gender roles she was forced to live. She becomes the face of rebellion in this ballad, when it is typically focused on Robin Hood, once again criticizing gender roles of the time. The Robin Hood and Maid Marian ballad left me questioning how we use these ideals today. What drag boils down to, in its most basic form, is gender expression and individuality. More importantly, drag also takes on Garber's third space, allowing us to self-actualize much like Maid Marian in her ballad. It takes a lot of bravery to be your authentic self, especially when the system you're living under shames it, or worse, criminalizes it. For many years in modern America, dressing in the clothes of the opposing gender was criminalized and used to target queer individuals systematically. Now, standards of gender norms create uncertainty that echoes throughout society, affecting trans and cis people alike when it comes to simple actions such as using the bathroom. The refusal of gender conformity allows attention to be brought to the ridiculousness of these binary-based laws. Drag also undeniably allows people to build community around art. It's more than a performance. People come together to watch and celebrate creativity and individuality, the main enemies of oppression. We have always been here through eras of erasure, and we will always be here. Robin Hood and Maid Marian show us how we too can step out of our prescribed social roles and choose how we want to perform, in and out of drag. Robin Hood is a fun story that continuously highlights the importance of rebellion and bravery. The characters demonstrate how deconstructing the gender binary leads us to break down societal standards that uphold unethical structures, which is crucial in the fight against oppression. The stories plead with us to do the same.